Real quick, I want to do a fair use. Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. I will give all praises, all honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachaha Chodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and do well, to the elder apostles, bishops in Connecticut, the bishops, the preachers, the teachers, the evangelists, and the four winds, preaching in truth and sincerity, risking your lives more now than ever, the hopeful elect, the elect. Shalom to the Israelite foreigners who phenotype may look like another nation, but bloodline goes back to Israel through your father and have come back to the fold. Shalom to your sisters, your Achwathim, who listen and learn under your husband, which is your spiritual leader, with meekness and with silence. This your brother Aram Yahawada with the lesson.
China, they're piloting it a few years ago in Shenzhen. So I lived overseas. If you go to Shenzhen, back in 2017, they already had facial recognition cameras there. So if you jaywalked in Shenzhen, they would immediately detect that and send you a notification, and they would deduct money from your what they call WeChat account. They use two main apps, WeChat and Alipay. So you can actually deduct your money directly from your account. This is 4 years ago, so this is not like some sort of conspiracy theory. It's not something that's going to happen 10 years into the future. This happened pre-corona in China. And so this system in China that exists is extremely advanced. They can detect if it's a man or a woman. They can guess your age. They can detect what kind of car model it is, who the manufacturer is. This is a sort of technology that we see in all these dystopian sort of films and whatever, and people keep putting it off and thinking that this is something that's going to happen later in my kids' lifetime or my grandkids. It's already here. And if this gets implemented anywhere, especially in a Western nation, it's not going away. Israel is already talking about the fourth shot. Then they're going to be going to herpes, and they're going to ask if you're gay. They're going to be asking if you ate 3 pizzas this week because it's unhealthy. If you buy certain books from certain countries, your country doesn't like you. You'll lose points in the social credit score system. So this is already the reality of the world in certain places, and we need to be aware of that if we don't want that or if we do. And to be perfectly honest, anybody who wants this vaccine passport, it's a misnomer. It's total control. Everything you do or don't do will be calculated. To the point where if they can detect your GPS signal, if you have a phone on you, they can detect who you're hanging out with. Oh, you're hanging out with somebody that said something bad 9 years ago on Weibo. Okay, like a Chinese equivalent to Facebook or something like that, right? Oh, you lose 2 points. Oh, you bought Japanese books. You lose 5 points because you don't like Japan. This is what is going to come here because it's already there.
And we're doing that a little bit with contact tracing for COVID, aren't we? So that they can see where you're at and who you're with.
The simple reality is that the technology that CSIS has and all these big tech corporations, they already know where you are. It's just that they don't want to shock the system too much and admit that they have it. Edward Snowden revealed all this back in 2013. He fled to Hong Kong. They wouldn't keep him there, so now he's in Russia. Yep. But the NSA has all of your information. They know your Google searches from like February 9th, 2004 in a bunker in Colorado.
Help me, Rhonda.
Right? They have all this information. So, but they don't. Like in the U.S., they have the Fourth Amendment. They can't. They're not supposed to track you forever, right? So they pretend they don't have it, but they do. Yep. If they really want to utilize it.
In 2014, the State Council of China published this planning outline for the establishment of a social credit system. Now, the first thing you should know about this document is that it's incredibly boring and almost artfully vague. Full of dense phrases like promote the improvement of legal person governance, you almost have to admire how little it manages to say in 16,000 Chinese characters. The second thing to note is the broader context in which it was released. 1 month earlier, in May of 2014, the same government announced what it described as a war on terror against violent extremism in Xinjiang. This would later evolve into a full-blown attack on Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities, including mass incarceration, surveillance, and violence that continues in modified form to this day. In other words, this was a time when much of the world was becoming, understandably, increasingly skeptical of the Chinese government. And here was this new, suspiciously ambiguous notion of social credit. The motive for some kind of inescapable system of surveillance and control seemed undeniable. In fact, what made the myth so potent was that it did contain an element of truth. In the years since, China has constructed a similarly oppressive, albeit less high-tech, police state in Xinjiang, involving DNA collection, phone searches, and security checkpoints. Besides, what else could the term social credit refer to? And if it truly had nothing to hide, why was the plan written in such cryptic language? But what few casual observers understood is that cryptic, inscrutable, Leninist-steeped jargon is kind of the Chinese Communist Party's whole thing. And there's a very specific reason. The benefits of autocracy for an autocrat are so obvious, complete unchecked authority, that it's easy to forget the trade-off. With complete authority comes complete responsibility. There's no one to blame. Consider how often Democrats and Republicans use each other as scapegoats. Dictators don't have that luxury. So, to insulate themselves from criticism, they often delegate a lot more power than you might expect. Now, make no mistake, Beijing always gets the final word, but think of it as an architect. It produces the national blueprint, first in the form of a policy document and later a policy outline, but whose actual implementation it outsources to lower levels of government, its engineers. When the actual building looks nothing like the concept art, the central government can keep its hands clean by pointing to its beautifully vague, boringly unobjectionable sketches. At the same time, it also, of course, has things it wants to accomplish, things that need to be communicated to the engineers. Thus, while these policy documents, as we saw, are indeed horribly tedious, they're not entirely devoid of content. You just have to understand party speak. So, what did it mean by social credit? According to Jeremy Daum, senior fellow at Yale Law School's Paul Tsai China Center and someone fluent in party speak, it was never a single policy. It wasn't even a very well-outlined goal. Instead, it was always, quote, shorthand for a broad range of efforts. The first of which was financial. In short, the millions born before the one-child policy became law in 1980 were in their prime working age years during the Chinese boom of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. That large mass of workers kept labor costs down, attracting foreign companies, who in turn invested that profit back into the country. But as all those workers began to retire, Chinese labor became a lot more expensive, leading to lower profits, and therefore less investment. That investment, however, could be replaced with consumption. In summary, if China was to keep growing, it needed to start spending. Yet, at the time, just 1/5 of the population had a credit report. Without banks or credit cards, they couldn't take out loans. And without loans, they couldn't spend as much money. Meanwhile, much of this large unbanked population used Chinese apps like WeChat and Alipay on a daily basis. So, the thinking was, what if all that data could be used to create alternative credit scores? 8 private companies were selected to do just that as part of a pilot project. The most famous was Sesame Credit, an optional service that gave users a 3-digit score. The second and larger focus of social credit was centered around trust. Ironically, while outsiders view China as a tightly controlled, closely monitored police state, many in China saw their country as the Wild West, untamed, unregulated, and lacking in consequences. In 2008, for instance, a company was caught using toxic chemicals in its milk and baby formula, making thousands of children sick. Scandals like these left deep nationwide scars. Some parents are, understandably, still suspicious of Chinese milk today. At the same time, corruption, once tolerated as a necessary ingredient to rapid economic growth, was beginning to reach a boiling point. Not only was the party losing control of its own members, but the public was starting to take notice. Stories of county bureaucrats driving Lamborghinis despite their measly official salaries were attracting a bit too much attention. And in the eyes of the party, all these things were connected. The milk, the corruption, it all represented a crisis of moral failure. One consequence of which was a general lack of trust throughout Chinese society. The solution was to build what it called, in its typically ambiguous way, a reputation society. Remember, this was the architect telling the engineer, here's a vaguely defined problem, now go try and solve it. The results were as random and chaotic as you'd expect. What, as a local bureaucrat, are you supposed to do with these instructions? No one knows, and that's the point. A few dozen cities across China rushed to implement their own social credit reputation systems, each with their own set of rules and rewards. One city announced it would subtract 3 points for every 5 cigarettes smoked, and add 5 for every 15,000 steps walked. No explanation was offered for how these numbers were determined, much less how this could possibly be enforced. But it didn't matter. The public backlash was so strong that the proposal was abandoned. Bizarrely, another city said it would penalize drunk driving and reward volunteer work, but then decided to make the system optional. A third city gave every citizen a grade from A to D, until someone compared it to the Japanese occupation of China, and it quietly disappeared. It was all very weird and impractical. Needless to say, the central government was thoroughly unimpressed. Evidently, the construction didn't match the blueprint. Alternatively, perhaps Beijing miscalculated the public's reaction and saw its opportunity to swoop in and protect the country from those terrible, no-good engineers. The People's Bank of China refused to renew the licenses of all 8 companies participating in the financial pilot project. Beijing also called out several local governments for being overzealous, instructing them to only punish what was already illegal.
Yeah, so this is Psalms chapter 64, verse 5. So yeah, they encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune, right, which means communicate, right, of laying snares privily, right? You know what I mean? So, behind so-called closed doors, they have these meetings, these G Summit meetings, and these, these BRICS meetings, and then, these different meetings of, these so-called elites, right? Because you have to ask yourself, how is it that you're one country, this person's another country, but yet somehow you're pretty much all doing the same thing? It's because they're having a meeting. This is all programmed and allocated through the elite, right? Who actually runs the world, right? which would be what they call the Illuminati, shadow government, or whatever you want to call it. But they commune with this, communicate, and they're laying down snares ultimately to their to the people. But for the most part, is they're trying to stop the elect from basically from prophecy being fulfilled. But in turn, they're actually fulfilling prophecy, because these are the things that the Lord said they would do. They say, who shall see them, right? Basically, like I said, dealing with the Illuminati, shadow government. See, they do these things, and they don't think that anyone sees them. Yeah, see, they search out iniquity. And so when you're setting up a social credit score, also what it says, a reputation score, right? And you're contact tracing people, right? What are you setting up? You're setting up a system that you can search out what iniquities, right? So if someone jaywalks across the street, yep, that's a point. You're docked. You say something against the government, you're docked a point, right? So really, this whole thing is a double-edged sword, right? Because on one end, you get the mark, you get the charagma, the karax, the grapho. Hey, you're cut off from the Most High. But if you get it, you at least actually can live a little bit longer, but you're living longer under a tyrannical means, right? And that tyrannical means is what's searching out what your iniquity, right? Any and everything that you do is scrutinized, right? Through the Palantir, through the social credit score that they plan on bringing. And China is basically the blueprint. Israel is the blueprint, right? Because that Palantir, that machine, or that what do you call it, surveillance, the AI surveillance, was tested in Israel on those Palestinians, which are not the actual Palestinians. They're the actual Palestinians are Hamites, and those are Ishmaelites who claim to be Palestinians now. But the point is they have been doing live tests on those people, which ultimately is the same thing that Trump said he wanted to do live tests, live training in these cities, right? And that's to perfect that Palantir. Also to put fear in people, right? Once you see what these things can do, the rest of you cities, the rest of the people is gonna get in line, so to speak. And as you can see, same thing what was in this video. It said China started out with basically coming up with an enemy. Oh, these people, they're this. They're basically calling them T's. These people. Oh, these are immigrants. They're so on and so forth. Pretty much the same thing that Trump is doing. And they said they were arresting people and things at a high rate, even to this very day. Right? Yeah. So let me go ahead and finish this up. It says they search out iniquity. They accomplish a diligent search, right, through the AI system, especially through the once they put the charagma in you, right? Every place you went, be time stamped. Everywhere you went, everything you've done, right? A diligent search, both the inward thoughts of every one of them and the heart is deep, right? So this is their ultimate innermost desire to know your innermost desires and your thoughts and your things, right? So they can judge you before you do it. That's that that Minority Report type situation, right? Ultimately making them a god, right? Yeah, so this is Psalms chapter 10, verse 8. It says, he sitteth in lurking places of the villages, right? In the secret places doeth he murder the innocent, right? And so basically, if you look at it, allegedly China created its own crisis, right? And which that's what you have now here, right? You have the so-called missing children, the women, the people that's missing, right? So we have this crisis of missing people, right? Because now they're murdered, they're dead, or whatever, they're just missing or murdered, right? The whole these things with these jakes come up hung, and women found out in the biome somewhere in a lake, right? Like this is an increasing number, right? It said 37 women were found. I forgot, what was it, Texas or something like that. And then you got these millions of people that's just missing, right? Then I think they was talking about I don't know if it was Texas too, somewhere in Texas. 40 something kids or 30 some odd kids got found in a pedo traffic thing with the kids. That was just recent. So with them murdering the innocent, his eyes are privily set against the poor, right? So really, now you can come in and say, with this crisis, something needs to be done, right? He lieth in wait secretly as a lion, right? That's why they got this military in all the cities, right? In his den, he lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doeth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net, right? So now, with all these different events happening, right? You have your crisis events happening. People are missing, this and that. You have your event of the so-called migrants, right? And so only thing that actually makes sense to come in, problem, reaction, solution, to come in and say, hey, we needed surveillance, right? We need to be able to surveil these things. We need to be able to give everybody a micro CHIP, right? So we know who's who, what's what, and then it will help from people coming up missing. And if someone do murder the innocent, we would know who it was, when it was, and when it happened, so that person gets punished. And that's when he's going to come in. He croucheth and humble himself, that the poor may fall by his strong one. See, and that's when he'll come in with the that problem reaction solution. Yeah, so this is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 3. Behold, which means feast your eyes, look, pay attention. Thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee, right? And basically, yeah, that's what you're going to be doing. This surveillance, this Palantir, using these things, the biometrics, the digital IDs, and you can't buy and sell without the digital ID, which is not the mark, right? Once you get the mark within you, implantable devices within you, that's the mark, of the MARK of the B, right? Yeah, that's the Beastie Boy, right? That's right. So it says, it says, with thy wisdom and with thy understanding, thou hast gotten riches and hast gotten gold and silver in thy treasures, right? Because, like Apostle Hart said it, if people understood money, right? I don't know if it was Roosevelt, he said, but it was some president. He said that if they understood what was going on, there will be an uprising today. Like, people will be uprising, but people don't understand money, in which that. So what you did is you put a debt. There's debt that people have, right? So in order to, it may seem like a blessing to some people, right? That's another way you could look at it, because you could collapse the system. Everything starts kind of, in a sense, all over. You push forth the social credit score, and it'd be like a reputation thing that goes along with it, right? And saying you just know through the CV-19, right? The silent killer of the middle class, wiping them out, right? You got yourself much treasure, riches. People don't completely understand, right? It says, by thy great wisdom and by thy traffic, right? Through of course, you do regular trades in goods, that's traffic, but then you do have the pedophile rings, traffic. You got the human traffic, right? Whether if it's sexual or slaves, right? Because basically there's still slave traffic going on, right? And so you're getting riches and things by that. But also, with that, you could use the fear tactic, because where are these people, these children, and these people disappearing to? So now, as you're making riches and money off of these situations, your wisdom is, we'll use this fear as also fear tactic. Now we could say, hey, you need to get this MARK within your body. And before we do that, we're going to make it to be where the digital ID is mandatory, where you can't buy and sell unless you have that. Which that way, when it comes to implication or the implantation, right, of putting it, right, slavery, plantation, yeah, right, into your hand or in your forehead, right? It's not a far-fetched thing because basically you've already been doing it, right? Problem, reaction, solution, all over again, going into it being gradualism all over again, right? So through the traffic of missing people and all these different things, has thou increased thy riches, and thy heart is lifted up because of thy riches, right? And now one of the great riches would be is actually as a commodity is the people, right? I mean, you basically already have the people, but to fully have them locked in, having the micro C hip and then using certain things, because that's what it says, because of thy wisdom, with thy wisdom and with thy understanding, thus has God. So how are you doing that? Through that wisdom, because you can use with your wisdom, you use fear, uncertainties, people unable to pay their bills, people are unable to do this, the complete exhaustion of life, and then people just basically willingly give themselves over and into the system, right? And then when you have that, and you have the Palantir and all the surveillance and everything, it says therefore thus saith the outer one, most high power, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, because thus has set thy heart, La'ab, your mind, as the heart or the mind of God, right? You sitting forth your mind to be God, right? Through all these circumstances, because really everything you've been making money off of, right? So you've been making money off the cartels and actually letting them bring in plenty of so-called drugs, right? Plenty of drugs. But now you have a so-called war against the cartels. When you were in cahoot with the cartels. Just watch the show called Snowfall, right? You were cahoots with them. But yeah. So yeah, no, and as you can see, this is all starting to make sense. The whole thing with creating this immigration thing, was he attacking, because that's basically what China did. Also attacking someone's reputation, so they had to attack the reputation of the so-called black community. So when they're attacking the reputation of the so-called black community, they're basically saying, what? Let us oppress the poor righteous man, right? Which we know that the so-called black community or so-called black culture is really Edomite culture, but it's within our community. So they're pushing it off the narrative, because you're the one who, from the time of slavery, took the father from the home, and then when you got a chance to implement it through the so-called welfare system, Section 8 or whatever, you would say the father couldn't be there in the home in order to receive help. Then you turn around and have a person debating college students and this and that people, basically, and that's the sentiments of all so-called white people into hurting the reputation of the so-called black community, right? So then you, in heighten this, you take this magnifying glass and you magnify this small problem, right? Because so-called black on black crime don't affect you, right? It affects just those people, because that's why it's so-called black on black crime. right? And it really actually makes the elite plenty of money. The elite makes money on all forms of it, right? The drugs, right? The trafficking of drugs. I didn't even mention that on that, right? Not just the human, the trafficking of so-called drugs, right? You make money off of that. You make money at the hospitals. You make money at the funeral homes. You make money on the stock market because these people, their bonds and things is their birth certificates and social security are in the stock market. So they make money hand over fist off of you. So that ain't really bothering them. But what you could do is come in and make this thing, and you put a magnifying glass, and you can say how horrible this community is. And now you could use this reputation, status quo thing, saying, well, these people act like this, and because it already has like a disdain to it, right? A dislike, especially through Edomites, right? So-called white people, self-proclaimed white people, they hate Jake no matter what. And then you already have Jake that doesn't like, other Israelites, right? Who don't like that type of behavior, right? And you can use it to oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare widows nor reverence the ancient gray hair of the age. So now you could bring in this system where it's a reputation system. Oh, you jaywalk, you this, you that, and that, and then you already got these Karens, right? Right? And and you're making a system, of these people being able to basically to tell on each other, right? This even what's his name, Prodigy was talking about that. They keep making all these movies of these snitches, right? Trying to develop a snitch culture, which I believe they did. That's why you got the Charleston. You have the other, what's his name, 369, or yeah, it's a 369, right? You got the Woody. You got all these different people who's supposed to have snitch, but they're prospering, right? So it's a way you could prosper if you snitch. So now with this thing, and you could say, hey, I don't like those type of behaviors or this or that, and I'm willing to snitch to make this money, or to get your credit score right, or to just try to dock somebody else's credit score so you can live better than the next person, right? Because now there ain't going to be any rich thing like that. The only way you can have this pompousness about you is if your credit score is better than others, which they kind of show you that on that Black Mirror, right? That was like says, let our strength be the law of justice. So, hey, when you come in and say this person's reputation is he jaywalks, his reputation is he speaks out against the government, this reputation is he's this and that. So now I got the ding on all these different levels, or cut off his access to be able to buy and sell all together because you're not with the program, right? And that's the law of the land. For that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth, right? So if you're not part of the system, you're not worth any attention being given to you. You're not worth any benefits within the system. We're just going to completely cut you off from the entire system because you're not obeying the social credit scores or reputations of them that keep the mark, the charagma, the karaks, right? Yeah. So this is Revelation chapter 13, verse 16, and he calls us all, both small and great, rich and poor. So whether you're so-called significant, and whether you're nothing, you're nobody, right? free and bond to receive a mark, right? The charagma, charax, grapho, right? And in this thing where they're headed to is to put your reputation and things also in line or on the line in these scenarios, which they were doing that recently, right? Through the internet. Certain people, they see you doing whatever on your Facebook, smoking, some type of drug, marijuana, whatever, some things that people have seen pictures, or even people saying their opinion on the so-called CK event, right? People got fired off of that. Those are things that were on the internet that have nothing to do with their job, not the capability of being able to do it or unable to do it. It has to do with someone seeing something on the internet. So you can see where this thing is going, right? So that's part of that reputation thing. They can get you on those things, right? Free and bond to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, right? Which it could be the left hand too, because in Europe they do the left hand, right? Because that's why it's in Revelation 14:9 it tells you hand, right? Which means right hand, left hand. In your hand, though you have a right hand, you have a left hand, or in your hand, right? Says that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. And whether you fall under the your reputation is you jaywalked or you spoke out against the government, and now you're going in, you want a nice steak dinner, and now you can't get it because now your points don't add up to you having a steak dinner and being able to catch the bus to go home, right? Or even like that other credit, it said if you had 5 cigarettes or you had this, and it docks you down for a certain amount of, and then they didn't have a real true regulation or even how that equated to what you took from me. They have no idea, but they just know that they can inflict it on you, right? And yeah, that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And that's ultimately what it's coming into, right? And all these systems are all go for it, right? Whether if it's Russia or China or Burkina Faso, everybody got that place on. Go to Burkina Faso, and you're gonna have to get the micro chip, right? They're going digital, right? Just like everybody else. Just like Ethiopia was told that they had to put all their information and their biometrics within their system before next year. That happened in Vietnam. They had to give all their information, and that was this year that all of them got locked out of their thing. And then I guess they're trying to do crypto, but it's the same thing. It's digital. It's digital currency. It's not real money, right? And even then, real money, which is gold and silver, ain't gonna save you. The only thing that can save you is Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, right? At the end of the day, it says this is Proverbs chapter 11 verse 4. Richest profit not in the day of wrath. So Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai has a day of judgment and a day of wrath, and that's coming. And the Lord said to warn you for him that you would not receive the plagues of the daughter of Babylon, right? Right? Because this place has to be destroyed. And people are following the system that is no good for them. But righteousness delivereth from death. So if you follow righteousness, you will be delivered from death. And not receiving that mark, not following behind this way. And these are just simple examples of how close we are to that system being implemented. The righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, and it will direct you away from receiving that mark, right? The charagma, the crux grapho, right? And you could see where they're going as far as this whole entire system, right? Social credit score, your reputation right along with it, saying you can't do this, you can't do that. They're taking away free speech. You can't say nothing. In a place that's built off of free speech, right? Freedom of expression. You don't have the freedom of speech or the freedom of expression, right? And even so-called black people are involved with dismantling that, right? They have the Sexy Red doing this thing with Martin Luther King, and then so many so-called black people saying something. Well, they said she can't make her expression, right? She can't express herself. She don't have a freedom of that. Right? So it says, the righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness, right? And a lot of people they're rich, they got money. They're gonna say, hey, you got to convert your money over to the digital dollar or you lose it. You got rich people. You got Jay-Z, a billionaire, LeBron James, billionaire. By their own wicked, hey, they're gonna fall by it, man. Oh, I better put my money over so I can have a certain amount of life. So that way my thing is a certain amount, so I can still live a decent life, right? That's what people are going to be haste to do. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but the transgressors shall fall. The transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness, man. So that's the time that we're living in, man. That a lot of people are going to be taken with their own naughtiness, man. Their own self-will, self-indulgement, right? Because, hey, that ain't living, man. You're gonna be policed everywhere, even in your own house. You're policed, watched. So I mean, what do you do, right? The dude was saying you can't even watch if you watch a porno, you get docked off your points for watching a porno. Right? If you take an alcohol drink, and some days you be stressing more than others, so you may take a couple more sips than others. Nope, you're docked. Right? Hey, you might even feel a little more frisky and have sex with your wife more times than you normally do, or you get docked for. Hey, bro, it's gonna be crazy, but that ain't living, man. Right? So with all that, I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha Kodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and do well. To the elder apostles, bishops in Connecticut, the bishops, the preachers, the teachers, the evangelists, and the evangelists in the four winds, preaching in truth and sincerity, risking your lives more now than ever, the hopeful elect, the elect, Shalom. To the Israelite foreigners, whose phenotype may look like another nation, but bloodline goes back to Israel through your father and have come back to the fold, Shalom. To you sisters, your Achwathim, who listen and learn under your husband, which is your spiritual leader, with meekness and with silence, and the Baba Ball, and Kwame Yasharallah.